The Skoda Enyaq is one of the more popular electric cars in Europe, and so it's a little bit odd that Skoda hasn't introduced another EV. It's been 4 years since the introduction of the Enyaq. However, today we are gonna drive the second electric car from Skoda. This is the Elroq, and I believe this car might become just as popular as the Enyaq, if not even more popular, because this car is a lot cheaper than the Enyaq and it offers even more value for money. Now in this video I'm going to tell you everything you need to know about this new Skoda. I'm going to show you the interior and the exterior, and I'm going to take the car out for a drive. Oh, and if you like this kind of content, make sure to hit that subscribe button. So the car is called the Elroq, and that's a bit of a nod to the Karoq. The Skoda Karoq is the medium-sized petrol SUV from Skoda, and this car is basically the same size-ish. You also have the Kodiaq on petrol, which is the biggest SUV from Skoda, and then you have the electric Enyaq, which is the biggest electric SUV from Skoda. Now the Elroq uses the same platform as the Enyaq. It's the MEB platform from the Volkswagen Group, because Skoda is owned by the Volkswagen Group. It's the same platform as the Volkswagen ID3, ID4, ID5, the Cupra Born, Audi Q4 e-tron, etc, etc. The Elroq is 4 meters and 48 centimeters long, which makes it 16 centimeters shorter compared to an Enyaq. The wheelbase is identical, so you still get a lot of interior room, but you do get less luggage space because the overhang at the rear is a little bit shorter compared to the Enyaq. Trunk capacity on the Elroq is 470 liters, which is around 100 liters less compared to the Enyaq. I believe the Enyaq has a trunk capacity of 580 liters. That doesn't mean that this car isn't practical. This car still offers plenty of room for a big holiday trip with the entire family. You can still fit around 2 or 3 suitcases and a couple of duffel bags. Now this car is also very practical when it comes to storage space, because this car has a lot of cubby spaces. There's even a little net where you can store your charging cable, which is really handy. And you can also move the parcel shelf as well. You can set it to a lower level, and then you can also store some items on the parcel shelf as well. There are 4 versions of the Elroq. There's the 50, the 60, the 85 and the 85X, which is the 4-wheel drive version. Now the 50 has a battery capacity of around 52 kilowatt hours. I know it's a little bit up. And the 60 has a capacity of 58 kilowatt hours. If you go for the 85, you get a capacity of 77 kilowatt hours. Now the smallest battery pack will give you a range of 347 kilometers. The second biggest battery pack will give you a range of 449 kilometers. And if you go for the largest battery pack, you'll get a range of 579 kilometers. Obviously, in reality, it will be less, around 100 kilometers or even more in winter. But still, that's a pretty decent range for a car like this. The charging speeds are also pretty decent. With the small battery pack, you can charge up to 140 kilowatts. If you go for the 58 kilowatt hour battery pack, you can charge up to 165 kilowatts. And with the big battery pack, you can charge up to 175 kilowatts. Again, pretty decent specs for a car in this segment. The power outputs also differs per battery pack. The small battery pack is connected to an electric motor on the rear, because the MEB platform is a rear-wheel driven platform, and the power output in the entry-level version is 170 horsepower. If you go for the 58 kilowatt hour battery pack, you get a power output of 204 horsepower. And again, with the larger battery pack, you get the most amount of horsepower. You get 286 horsepower. That's the version I'm driving today. This version will do 0 to 100 kilometers an hour in 6.6 seconds. It's actually a pretty fast car. The top speed of this car is 180 kilometers an hour. And if you got the least amount of horsepower, so in the entry-level version, you will do 0 to 100 kilometers an hour in 9 seconds, which is still pretty decent. 170 horsepower is pretty adequate for an entry-level version. From the back and the side, this car is pretty much identical to an Enyaq. However, the front end design is completely different. Take for example the light situation. You get some daylight running lights here on top, and you get the actual headlights down here below. The car also doesn't have a grille, unlike the Enyaq, which still has a pretty big grille on the front, which is obviously a fake grille because it's an electric car. However, this Elroq only has this small black trim here up front. Skoda likes to call this black piece of trim here the tech deck. And tech means technology, because here you got all the technology like the front end camera here and also the sensors for the self-help drive systems. You also have Skoda here written out in full, which is also completely new for a Skoda model. Now in early 2025, Skoda will facelift the Enyaq, and Skoda will introduce this design language on the Enyaq as well. And from then on, both cars will pretty much look identical, except from the part that this Elroq is just a little bit shorter compared to the Enyaq. So the wheelbase on this car is identical to the wheelbase of the Enyaq, so the space between the front and the rear axle. And that means that this car is pretty roomy. I am 1.80 m and I am sitting behind myself, so to speak, and I've got plenty of knee room and also plenty of headroom as well. Now optional, you can get some heated seats here in the back, and as standard you get 2 USB-C ports. You also get ISOFIX here as well, and you get 3 headrests, and there's also a center armrest with 2 cup holders. You can also get some extra cubby spaces here down here below. You get this plastic tray, so to speak, that you can remove if you want to have like a flat floor. But if you want, you can use this for some extra storage space. Quite handy. Skoda Enyaq owners will be very familiar with the interior of the Elroq, because you basically get the exact same interior that you get in the Enyaq, which is a bit of a shame because that means that you don't get anything new. We're already familiar with this interior, and new is always better. Or is it? Because if you ask me, the interior doesn't feel outdated, and all the bugs and malfunctions that the Enyaq had when that car was first introduced are all solved in the Enyaq, and so you don't have them in this brand new Elroq. You get this massive infotainment screen here in the center of the dashboard, and the infotainment system is pretty zippy. It's a very nice infotainment system, a whole lot better than the infotainment system on the Enyaq a couple of years ago. It's very fast, there's a lot of compute power, and the menus are quite clear. You don't have to go through a lot of menus to find the functions that you are looking for. There's a separate menu for the battery, and you can use that menu to preheat the battery. So if you're planning to go to a supercharger, you can preheat the battery, and then you can fast charge a bit faster than if you wouldn't do that. And especially in the winter, that's just a very nice function to have. And like I said, the rest of the interior is identical to that of the Enyaq. So you get 2 cup holders here in the center, you get a cubby space here, and there's a place where you can leave your phone to charge wireless. There is a new steering wheel, or the center part of the steering wheel is new, because just like on the bonnet, you don't get a logo here on the steering wheel as well. Here you have Skoda written out in full as well, but again in the Enyaq that will also be changed quite soon. You're probably not going to be surprised when I tell you that this car drives pretty much like a Skoda Enyaq. This car uses the same platform. Sure, it's a little bit shorter and it's a little bit lighter, but the difference isn't that much that this car drives completely different. So that means that this car is pretty comfortable. It's also, well, not really dynamic, but it is a fun car to drive, just like the Enyaq. And just like the Enyaq, you can go for the DCC option, which is the dynamic chassis control option. So you get adaptive suspension. This particular car that I'm driving right now is the Sportline version with the DCC option, and you can really notice the difference when you go from sport to comfort. And if you're in sport mode, this car is actually pretty sporty. It's not super sporty, but it is pretty sporty for a compact electric SUV. You can notice that this car is pretty heavy, more than 2 tons, so it is actually pretty heavy. It's a bit heavier, or actually quite a bit heavier than a Kia EV3, and you can really feel the weight, especially when you try to drive a little bit faster into the corners. So personally, I wouldn't go for the DCC option because this car isn't that sporty, even with the DCC option. And I think the base suspension on this car is sporty enough. It's a pretty dynamic chassis as it is. And overall, you probably want to use this car as a family car, and then you want this car to be very comfortable, and then you don't really need the DCC option, so just go for the regular suspension if you ask me. And overall, this car is just a very pleasant car to drive. You got plenty of visibility all around, also from the back. And in the Sportline version, you also get these sport seats with an integrated headrest. You also get some carbon fiber look material on the dashboard as well. And the rooftop is dark, or the material is dark. You also get some fake carbon in the door panels as well. Overall, I think the Skoda Elroq might become a very big success, just like the Enyaq. Because, let's talk pricing. This car will start from around 35,000 euros, depending on where you live, which is quite a good price on a car like this, especially with the base spec. Obviously, the 35,000 euros is for the entry-level version, which can already fast charge with 140 kilowatts. You get a range of more than 300 kilometers, so that's a pretty good deal. Especially considering the fact that the Enyaq with the exact same specs is around 7,000 euros more expensive. Again, with the exact same specs. Obviously you get 16 centimeters more car, but I'm not sure that justifies the price of the Enyaq when this car will come to market. So if I had to choose between the Enyaq and the Elroq, and I had to spend, let's say, 45,000 euros, I'd rather go for a well-spec'd version of the Elroq compared to a lesser spec'd version of the Enyaq. Now, the biggest competitor of this car is probably going to be the Kia EV3, and I also made a video with the Kia EV3 as well. So if you want to know exactly what the main differences are between the Elroq and the EV3, make sure to check out this video. If you like this video, give it a big thumbs up and don't forget to hit that subscribe button, and then I'll see you in the next video.